It's Mystery Series Week. We're here at Black Dog Books in Zionsville speaking with members of Speed City Sisters in Crime, the Indiana chapter of a worldwide association of mystery crime writers called Sisters in Crime. The Indiana chapter has over 40 members, many of them published mystery crime writers, as well as readers and fans of the genre. They hold monthly meetings with awesome speakers such as prosecutors, forensic specialists, policemen, and well-known mystery crime writers. 17 of them recently collaborated on a book titled Murder 2020. It's an anthology of 17 short crime stories set here in Indiana. We're interviewing 8 of these authors and will broadcast the interviews this week in 4 segments on Black Dog Books Facebook. Murder 2020 is available for purchase at Black Dog Books. Sisters in Crime has also generously donated a copy of Murder 2020 signed by all 17 authors that we'll be giving away at the end of October here at Black Dog Books. If you'd like to win this book, listen to the broadcast to learn how you can enter the drawing. The authors will introduce themselves, tell us the title of their story in Murder 2020, and read us their favorite line from their story. Then I will ask them some questions.
Hi, I'm Janet Williams. I'm a journalist and a fiction writer, and one of my stories is in Murder 2020. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I really love being able to share and talk about the work that we do, both as a chapter of Sisters in Crime and as a writer who is just really stretching my wings as a fiction writer after 4 decades as a journalist. I'd like to share some of my favorite lines from my story, which is 100 Years a Widow. Is it true she murdered her husband? I didn't recognize the low, hushed voice. I couldn't even tell if it was male or female. But what did it matter? I lie here, tethered to IVs pumping life into me, a tube down my throat to help me breathe, and a machine beeping at a steady rhythm to let the doctors and nurses know I am alive. Alive, if you can call this living.
Thank you. I have to ask, what made you choose this setting for your story?
Well, we had the theme of 2020 as it, and the title actually came to me first, 100 Years a Widow. So somebody who is dying in 2020 who was old enough to have been married and had a child in 1920. And I realized as that kind of stretches the bounds of reality a little bit, but hey, it's my story. And a lot of the story has its basis in some factual information. My grandmother was widowed because of what happened to her husband during World War I. And I heard a lot of stories about what he experienced during storms and just how tough it was for my grandmother living with a husband and 4 little kids who had been badly shell-shocked in the First World War. He died when my mother was 3 years old in a VA hospital in Philadelphia, which was a long train ride from Pittsburgh where my grandmother lived. So those stories kind of resonated with me, and I kind of fictionalized it to a woman, you know, kind of dying and reflecting on these experiences as you try to unravel, you know, what happened to the husband. Did she really kill her husband because of whatever they were going through?
Yeah, great. When you develop characters, do you already know who they are before you begin writing, or do you let them develop as you go?
It's more like the characters reveal themselves to me as we go along, and it wouldn't surprise me if you heard that from some of the other, some of my fellow writers, because a lot of us Well, one thing I learned from a writing teacher that I had at the Indiana Writers Center was, take a walk with your characters. Let them tell you about them, and let them know, and they'll let you know who they are. So I take a lot of walks in the park with my dog when I'm just starting to formulate the characters and the ideas, and it sort of comes together, and I think the characters tend to reveal themselves to me as much as me seeking them out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite character?
In the story?
In this story or another story you've written? This one, if you've got one?
I like the great-granddaughter, or the great-granddaughter.
Sarah?
Yeah. If any character is kind of a little bit of me, that's probably the character, because I was very close to my grandmother and listened to her stories, and I knew the stories very well.
And how has being a member of the Sisters in Crime helped you as a writer?
Oh my, I can't even begin to tell you how much and how grateful I am for an organization like Sisters in Crime. I mean, like Steve here is a really good writer, and just kind of reading some of his stuff in the novel he wrote, The Last Train to Stratton, you can just really see the character development and as the story unfolds, and as I read what my peers have done, and as we work together in critique groups, I understand a little more about how to write, how to tighten my writing. I just wrote a story where it was long, and with the help from a writing group that I was part of, really helped me kind of pare it down and make it a very lean story. So we have speakers and workshops that really help us focus on our writing and our skills. But I think one of the biggest things is what we kind of bring together, and the encouragement that we give each other.
That's wonderful. I remember one time Mark Twain said, "If I had more time, I would have written you a shorter note."
True.
Well, I'm Stephen Terrell, and I am a recently retired lawyer, although I'm still technically active. And I've been writing for a long time. My entry in Murder 2020 is a short story called In Deepest Darkness, and it is a very dark story. There's no question about it. The title comes from Proverbs 20:20, and that's how it relates to the title of the book, Murder 2020. If you want to hear a little bit of just from the beginning, the priest's words echoed off the high ceilings and cavernous emptiness of the church. The first sunlight streaming through the stained glass images of the Stations of the Cross dimly lit pale statues of the saints. A dozen worshipers for the morning mass were scattered in the first few pews, but Hannah Carmichael sat in the back row, an observer rather than a participant. Okay.
What motivated you to choose a theme for a story, and perhaps this one?
Well, again, we started with the idea of the project, which is Murder 2020. The story had been swimming around in my head for probably, I don't know, maybe a year. I'm sort of that way with my writing. I have stories that swim around, or ideas. And this came from, as a lot of things do in my writing, I'm a rather voracious reader of the news, and this came from a news story. And it's not a news story, it's not a retelling of it, but it was inspired by it. And we talked about writers that we have at our conferences, things of that nature. Matthew Clemens is a great guy, good writer, writes mystery stories. He's out in Iowa. He attends and speaks at conferences all over the country. And Matthew's made the point about you take a starting point, the news story that I saw about a school shooting, and then you ask, what if? And then, what if this? And what if that? And that's sort of how the story grows.
You began the story with Proverbs 20:20. Did you decide to use that before writing the story or after you began?
It was after the story came to my mind. I was looking for a title, and biblical verses are always a good resource for a writer.
What do you enjoy about being a writer?
That's hard to say. I've been writing stories since I was in 5th grade, I think. And if you talk to writers, you find that is a common thread among most writers, whether it's Michael Conley or whether it's somebody who's never been published at all. Almost everybody who writes started with that thread when they were young, of reading and then wanting to write. When I was in high school, I wrote a short novel. I'm not sure it was that good. As a matter of fact, I know it wasn't. But it's something you latch onto, and writing's always been a part of my life. I was a journalist before I went to law school, and after law school, I continued to write for professional journals. I was recognized for the quality of briefs that I write, which are entirely different writing than I do with short stories or my novels. It's just an inherent part of me.
Yeah. As a member of Sisters in Crime, what would you say, how have they helped you, or who have been some of your favorite resources that they brought to the speakers?
Well, just to make a point, I'm a Mr. Sister. That's what everybody refers to the male members of Sisters in Crime. But men are as welcome as women to join the group. They take vital, active roles in the organizations. We've had chapter presidents and officers who've been men. Despite the name, it's a great place, whether you're a man or a woman, to join if you're interested in writing. As far as people who have been great that we've had in sessions, this is a guy named Bill Sullivan. Did a fascinating program on his book about DNA and the structure of the human body and what causes us to act who we are. I can't think of the exact title of it. I know it's nominated for a Best Indiana-based Author award.
It won.
Did it win?
It won.
That doesn't surprise me. It's a great book. And the interesting thing is it's nonfiction. It's all very scientific, although Bill writes with a nice ease that makes it accessible to people. And how does that relate to what we do? Every one of us sitting there, I'm sure when we're listening to Bill, we're going like, oh wow, we could use that in a story. You can use that in a story. That'd be a great way to kill somebody.
Yeah.
The other thing is you have to be careful when you're Sisters in Crime or with meeting with other murder mystery writers, is you do notice if you sit down in a restaurant or in a coffee shop and you start talking, that sometimes people look at you really funny as you're talking about how to best kill somebody or how to get away with this, and sometimes they move away. It's amazing how that happens.
This concludes our Mystery Series Week broadcasts of interviews with Sisters in Crime authors. If you would like to win a signed copy of Murder 2020, visit Black Dog Books in Zionsville, where you will be able to enter your name into the October 31st drawing.